Man, welcome to the Level Up and Live show. I'm so excited about this. We've been trying to get Jason. We've been reaching out for a while. We have a list of people that we look at, and we're like, man, this person would be a perfect fit for the show. And everybody's schedules work out different and everything. But I signed up for Jason's email list a while ago just because I want to get to know them and how they do things. And so there's a number of people I've been on there. Some of them that haven't been on the show, I've unsubscribed from them, like because they're just not a fit. But when I heard that Jason was coming on the show, I was like, oh man, his email is just, it's probably one of the best emails I've ever read, and that I get. It's daily, and I don't know how you do it daily. I mean, that's the beautiful thing, and I'm going off on a tangent here, but you tell people that you do it daily, and why you do it daily, and you're giving away your secrets, right? Like that would be a secret to some other people, but the way you do it is just brilliant. And so any business owner, entrepreneur, anyone wanting to get into business, listening to this today is in for a treat, because it's not a fluff. It's not some conceptual thought process. That he's been in the trenches. He's learned everything that he's going to talk about today. And so we're just really excited to have you on, man. You're the CEO of the Entrepreneurial Minimalist. You've got a couple of books out. The Nomad Formula. Well, it was the Nomadic
Nomadic wealth formula. Yeah.
Wealth Formula. Yeah, super cool. So yeah, man, we're going to dig into all that today. And yeah, if you'd like to just give us a little extra, we'd love to hear it.
No, man. I mean, you did a pretty good job. We can talk about email if you want to. That's something that I do well. Most of what I do is a little bit different than what you see, and I'm happy to unpack any of that for you guys and help your listeners understand why I do it the way I do it. But no, that's pretty much it. I had a business a few years ago, coaching traders and investors. And I built that business to, we were doing 3 to 5 million a year, depending on the year. And I realized about 4, 5 or 6 years into that I had all the things I wanted my business to be able to do for me, the freedom, the flexibility, the wealth, that I'd kind of screwed it up. And so I did a reassessment when I left that company, and came up with this concept of entrepreneurial minimalism, to try and figure out what was broken in the business that didn't result in what I wanted. And also, what are the things that I needed to change if I wanted to really have the sort of freedom and income mobility and all the stuff that people sell you on when you buy into the entrepreneur lifestyle. But I think what people don't realize is that rarely happens. It rarely happens the way that people claim. And most of it's just a marketing tactic to try and get you to buy whatever it is that they're selling you. And so I kind of redefined my business a little bit. And that's what I do now, is I help coaches, consultants who want to build businesses, and also those who already have what I would call a prison business, and who are trying to re-engineer that business to get the things out of it that they wanted when they started.
You mentioned the term prison, and we know that term, right? And I know that term, and I think to a certain degree, every business owner, every entrepreneur, you have your different percentages. I've always looked at it like the Michael E. Myth, the book, technician, entrepreneur, manager. So once I found out about that, I was like, oh, I'm the technician. I'm the prisoner in the business doing all the work. And so once I learned to shift those percentages, now I'm doing 80, 90, 100% of the entrepreneur work, working on the business, working on myself in that role. And so I'm curious with you, Jason, in that transition and helping, the prisoner of the business. What are some signs of, somebody listening to this, and they're a business owner, they're an entrepreneur, and they're like, nah, not me. I'm working on the business. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm doing the things that I need to do. Not me, right? Whether it was ego, pride, whatever it may be. But what are some signs that you are a prisoner to the business that you've experienced?
That's a good question. And I think that, so when we talk about entrepreneur, what does that mean to be an entrepreneur? Well, most people think, and if you look at the actual definition, we're trying to build a business to one day sell it, right? So in order to do that, you need all kinds of operational structures inside of the business that will work without you. Because when someone buys a business, this is a misconception too, they're not buying the product or the service or any of that stuff. What they're buying is future cash flow. Right. So if you take yourself out of the equation, can the business function as though you weren't there? Because they put somebody else in your role and the business will still work. And for 90% of businesses, especially online businesses, coaching, consulting specifically, that's not the case. Like, you have to do a lot of work. And so when I was building my first company, I realized that about 4 or 5 years in. I was like, hey, I don't know if I ever want to sell this, but I probably ought to have structures in place to be able to do that. And so I hired a bunch of people, and took myself out of the role, the creative role of the company, which was doing the work, working with clients, stuff that I really enjoyed. And I started doing all of the managerial work inside the company because I knew that managers are easy to replace. And so I had people, we did stuff. I was part of the, I guess, the process of deciding what we were going to do and what we were going to promote, what products we were going to build. But I wasn't involved much at all with the execution. I got so bored inside of that company that I actually started a podcast, and we grew that thing up to 30,000 listeners a day. And I realized that at the end of it that I didn't have any of the freedom. I had a lot of money. So I was making millions of dollars a year, and I was taking home a big chunk of that because in coaching businesses, the profit margins are really high.
Yep.
But I could never take a day off. I was constantly dealing with fires. I had 12 employees on 3 continents. Yeah, 3. And it was frustrating. And I realized that none of this money and all this stuff I was making was satisfying me and fulfilling me as a person. And that's
Mm.
something that I really wanted as a business owner. When I started my company, I wanted more control over my life and I wanted to do more fulfilling work. Those are the 2 things. And if you ask most business owners, that's what they're looking for too.
Yeah.
And I didn't have either one of those. I wasn't doing the work inside the company I enjoyed, and I didn't have the freedom or income mobility to just pick up and move or go on vacation if I wanted to. And so those are some real clear signs. Is if you're waking up every day and you don't enjoy the work that you're doing in the business, or you're waking up and you realize, hey, I haven't had a vacation in 2 years, and I don't know if I can find time on the calendar. Because you keep in mind, I think at the peak that I was running my business, we had to make about $600,000 a year just to keep the lights on, pay the employees. That didn't include commissions to the sales reps, it didn't include the taxes we had to pay. It was just 600 grand to keep the lights on. And what people don't realize is they build this machine, and this machine has to be fed. It's like an animal, right? And you can put all of the processes in place that you want to. It still is this drag on you. And if you're like me, I was really, to me, it wasn't, I didn't have my family to feed. I had 12 other families to feed because every person in my company had kids. And so I'm responsible for 12 other families, including mine. And that puts a pressure on people that I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs want. And there are rare exceptions, but of the ones I've talked to, that's something, what they wanted was something that they could enjoy and some more freedom. And that's not what they get. So if that's what you're feeling right now, it's because you've structured the business the wrong way. You've listened to a bunch of gurus who tell you that the objective is growth. And if you're not growing and if you're not running a multi-million-dollar business, somehow you're failing as an entrepreneur. I make significantly less money than I did back then. And I'm way happier than I was when I was managing that huge machine and following somebody else's idea of what success looks like.
You just blew a lot of people's minds by saying that. Like
Yep.
they can't jive with what you just said because it's, you had that vision that you nailed, right? It was that vision. We were just talking about this, that you achieved it, but the vision behind that wasn't, which is what you actually wanted, it wasn't that thing you got. And then you're dissatisfied, even though you had the money. The money doesn't mean anything. And now you're speaking, saying, yes, making less, but you love your life. And that is what you were looking for. And you did it. And now you're able to teach it, which is beautiful.
Yeah. It's a hard thing for people to understand if you don't have any money, because that you're just trying to figure out, how do I keep my head above water, right? But what you don't realize when you're broke, and I everybody says this, but I grew up pretty poor. I didn't grow up like dirt floor poor, but we grew up double wide trailer poor. And what you don't realize when you're poor is that money only matters to people who don't have any. And once you get enough, most people have a number. And after that, it becomes, just a way to keep score. It's almost like, okay, how well, and if the scorecard is how much revenue did I do this quarter over last, or this year over last year, then it sends people down a road that I don't think they really want to go down. And what you got to find out is what's the number that I need to make in order to be comfortable and in order to have the lifestyle that I would like to live. And what I realized after having the big house and big fancy cars and all that stuff, that I really didn't care about any of that stuff. I thought I did, because more than anything, I think it was a status symbol. It was proof to me as a poor kid from Kansas that, oh, I'm somebody, like I made it. And what I realized later is, dude, none of that stuff matters. That's just it's on a 7,000 square foot house, it's a $1,100 electric bill every month. So, you know,
Don't even
I
talk about
think
the taxes, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, don't forget it. Yeah, exactly. And so when you start thinking about it like that, you're like, dude, what else could I do with this money? I could go on vacations. I could do so much more with this that would be more fulfilling for me as a person and create kind of a more meaningful and I always say live your life like you're telling a story and make it one worth reading. Right. And what I realized was that was not my life. My life was not a story anybody would want to read. It was get up, go to work, come home, take care of the kids, go back to work, then go to sleep, right? And that was my life every day. So again, that's why I stepped away from that, not to get off the negative, but that was kind of where I was at and why I kind of restructured what I was doing.
How long ago was this before you transitioned?
It's about 6 or 7 years ago.
6 or 7 years ago. So 6 or 7 years ago, Jason Stapleton's listening to this podcast, listening to this episode. He's in the grind. He's in the hustle. He's making things happen, boy. Multi-millionaire, got the house, got the cars. He's listening to this and he's like, yeah, that's me. What would be that one thing he needs to hear to go, wait a minute, I'm doing it all wrong. I need to shift mindset. I need to shift gears a little bit and listen to what this guy's saying.
Yeah.
What would be that one thing he need to hear?
What I would tell him is to stop looking at revenue as the barometer of success, and instead focus on how much fulfillment and income mobility the business is providing you. See, because that's what I think we all are after. As I said before, I think most people start businesses because they want to have more control over their time and they want to do more fulfilling work. And if that's not what's happening, and you're successful, right? And you're already successful, it's probably because you've gotten that out of alignment and you've been chasing growth and revenue and somebody else's expectation of what qualifies as success. And it's taken you away from where you want to be. I don't think most people want to run a $10 million business. I don't think they really understand what it means to run a $10 million business. In my industry and working with coaches, they're very creative people. And they actually like helping people. They like being in there and seeing transformations in other people's lives, whether it's writing or fitness or I don't know, some sort of life coaching, whatever it is. They like seeing that. And you take them out of that creative space, and now all of a sudden they're like, dude, I don't want to. So in some cases, you could say, I don't even want to be an entrepreneur. I'm just a creative person who runs a business because that's the way I meet my objectives, which are more freedom and fulfillment, right? So, if that's you and you're feeling that way, number one, yeah, something's broken, but number two, it's fixable. Right? It's just going to take some time and you're going to have to make some hard choices because it's going to mean dialing back and probably shrinking the business so it's more controllable and more flexible, but it's very doable.
How would you? So we're using you as an example here, but this is everybody. Like everybody, would you have listened to yourself and would people? Let's say they're exactly where you are today. Like, how do you get them to understand? How do they digest that? Because that's that you got to pull them out of that mindset. It just might even be impossible in my mind. It's like, how do you get that to speed up? I guess really maybe walking them through it. Like, how do you do that?
I don't even try. So this is the funny thing about, so I told you I started a podcast. It was actually a political podcast, oddly enough. And what I realized very quickly is that you don't change someone's mind who doesn't want it changed, right? If you look at cults, I'm a huge like a nerd about cults. I read because it's always interesting to me because you think that people who join cults are these like depressed, like crazy people who are of low intelligence, who are easily duped. But that's not the case at all. Most of them are highly intelligent people. Like, how does this person convince this guy to sell everything that he owns and come and follow me for 15 years of his life? It's incredible. And what happens is cults don't go looking for people to convert. They go looking for people who want to be converted. They look for people who are at a point in their life where they're searching for something different. They recognize that something is broken and they may not even know what it is, but they're actively looking for something to put their faith and trust in. And so instead of trying to convince somebody that I'm right and they're wrong, I just continue to do stuff like this, where I just have conversations about it. And at some point that's going to resonate and I'm going to meet that person who's at that inflection point and who sees what we're talking about here and says, no, that's for me. That what he's saying, that speaks to me. And I just let everybody else go. And in terms of business and marketing, that's a really important part about your marketing too. You say, we talked about email earlier. I email every day. I email every day for one reason, because I know that the vast majority of people who are going to buy into people don't buy coaching when they want it. They buy coaching when there's an emergency, when they need it, right? And so your job as someone who sells those kind of services is to be there when they're ready. When the disaster strikes, when they're finally at the tipping point, you want to be front of mind. And so that's why I email every day. It's just to stay in front of people so they see my name and that they're continuing to get value from me. And so that's where we need to be as business owners in our marketing. Is we need to be top of mind when someone has the pain or problem that we can solve.
Yeah.
Jason, I'm reading on your website that you've helped. How many coaches have you helped?
Oh man, I don't even know. That's so funny. See, it's so funny. Years
Thousands,
ago,
right?
so let me give you, so you'll see very few testimonials on my stuff, and it's intentional. So I had years ago I want to call it the early internet marketing days, because I started in 2009. There were a wave of people who got lawsuits because they had testimonials on their sites. And it was the same time all the multi-level marketing folks were also getting hit because they were claiming people were making all this money when the average person makes like 38 cents a year.
Yeah.
So it's actually against the law to put testimonials on your website if they don't accurately reflect what the average person will do. And since I work with coaches, I sell courses and workshops and all this stuff over the years, I don't track any of that. I come in, I try and help people, I do what I can, and then I have success stories, but I don't know if those are representative of what the average person will get, and I would imagine they're not. And so I don't put a lot of stuff on there. And so if I had to ballpark it, it would be close to 1,000. And if you count the traders and investors that I worked with, it's in the tens of thousands. We were in 110 countries, so it was huge.
So which is fantastic for all of our data, nerds and geeks out there. And I know you will appreciate that one. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, okay, cool. We've learned from Donald Miller, story branding,
Oh, great guy.
marketing. Yeah. And so you had mentioned it before the podcast that, you may have been an avid follower.
I didn't know if you knew of Donald Miller or not, but I was like, but man, I hold Donald Miller up here really, really high. And I said, man, I think Jason's in that camp. I don't know if they know each other, or if he follows them, or if Donald follows you. But you're in that, like, you really touch into people's mindsets, the souls. You're so honest. I think that's why it's so beautiful. You're just very upfront, which is so rare. Like, most people are trying to work at an angle of some sort, but you're just speaking what is true, and you just can't not gravitate towards that.
Yeah.
Well, it's important. Well, first on Donald Miller, I've been in this business now for 15 years, and so I recognize all the stuff, right? Some of the tricks and, like you say, the marketing tactics I've used in the past, right? Because I'm no different than anybody else. But you can very quickly recognize who the kind of fake guy is, the guy who's selling you a pipe dream, and somebody who's actually there to really facilitate you getting the outcome that you want. And the reason I just try and be honest is because in our world, you get paid for outcomes, right? There are always people who confuse activity with accomplishment. They confuse buying a course with actually getting a result, or they confuse finishing a program or a cohort with actually succeeding at something. But for the people that we really want to work with, the high ticket clients who are going to pay you the most money over time, those people are measuring outcomes. And the one thing I don't want when people come to work with me are improper expectations. I want them to know exactly what they can expect. I want them to know about the reality of this business. And if they're still like, nope, I want to give it a go, then we can work together. But we do that with transparency and honesty. And I think that if more coaches would do that and would steer clear of kind of like the hypey crap that they always push, that the results they would get for people would be better.
What do you feel? So you said 6 years ago, you went through this transformation, 15 years you've been building, right? Learning the skill sets, the entrepreneur journey, and helping coaches in building their business, and just really sticking to a few things. And I'm curious, over the years, transitioning from from when you started to where you are today, what has really catapulted you from a branding standpoint in your business and attracting more coachees to your business or coaches to come and do business with you?
Oh man, that's a really hard question to answer. I subscribe to a concept called authority branding, which is a little bit different than the way most people teach personal branding. So it involves a process of creating what I call a TPOV, or a transformational point of view. If you guys can get these two dudes on the show, it would be great. Christopher Lochhead and his business partner, Kevin, I can't remember his name. They wrote a book years ago called Play Bigger. I think that's what it's called. But anyway, they're the category design guys. They created this philosophy called category design. They come from Silicon Valley, and is a way to reimagine what it means to do branding in the modern day. And fascinating book. And I've been doing marketing for years and branding for years, and I considered myself to be like an expert at personal branding because I built 3 different businesses in different industries with my own name. And what I realized when I read that book was that I really misunderstood the entire process. And so when I redesigned my brand, the branding training I do, I incorporated that, because what we want in creating a brand is we want clear differentiation. We don't want, okay, there's guy A who can do this for me, or there's guy B who can do this for me, and which one do I want? Well, we want to show up and be like, hey, we want our clients saying, hey, do I want this or do I want something else? Because if I'm getting this, I'm getting something very specific. So we talk about entrepreneurial minimalism, right? That's a concept that I named, and it's a mouthful, but nobody else owns that. And when you come to me, if you're going to work with me, if you want to build $100 million or $10 million company, I'm not your guy. If you want to create, I hate the word, but lifestyle business where you get to work with people on your schedule, you don't have to go to an office, you don't have to manage a bunch of employees, then I'm your dude. I can build that. And so that's kind of the lane that I run in. So there's no real comparison between what I'm doing with my clients and what other people do. I have a unique way of doing my coaching and the way that we teach it. I don't sell courses, right? So there's all these different things that create differentiation. So when somebody's looking at whether they want to work with me, it's very hard to compare me to anybody else. And that, if you can get that and you can build that into your business, you build a moat around yourself that can't be penetrated by competition.
Man, that leads me to think. So when your coaches come to you, and we were talking about this earlier. Also, they often think they think this is what they're coming to you for, and they're like, "Oh, he's going to help me with this." But then it's normally not what they're coming for, because they know about that. Normally, what their issue is what they don't actually know, and that's what you most likely peel back the covers on and shine the light on it. Is there like a running theme of what they think they're coming to you for, or are you so? Or, I'm just thinking of this now. You're so well branded; they very well might know what it is, and they're just straight up show me how to do it. Like, or do you feel like a lot of people do come and they think they want this, but really you help them find that?
Yeah, there are some things that it depends on who I'm working with. So I said there's kind of 2 verticals of my business. There are people who are what I would call aspirational coaches, or people who are doing less than 100,000 a year. So I put 100,000 a year because I consider that's the point where most coaches are like, man, I might be able to do this full time. Right. So those would be the I'm not unsuccessful, but no, they hadn't quite achieved the amount of success they need to run it full time. And then you have the other group of people who are already successful coaches. They're doing, $250,000, $500,000 a year, and or more in some cases, and they want to try and re-engineer the business to create the kind of freedom and flexibility I talked about earlier. And so if you're talking to the first group, the younger group, they tend to have misconceptions about the amount of time and the amount of difficulty that's going to be required. And I sell implementation. I don't sell information. I put out information for free, right? If you want to know how to do it and you want help doing it, then I can help you with that. But I try and give away as much information about how stuff should be done as possible so that people have a clear idea. But it doesn't matter how much research you've done. When you finally get into it, there's just stuff that you're going to have to learn and that you don't know. And my job there is just to shortcut the time, to try and, close the gap between the knowledge gap that you need in order to get where you need to go. So do this, don't do that, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But
So now,
in terms of do they come to, so again, another thing I do differently is if you want to join one of my coaching programs, you don't go to a landing page. I send you a Google Doc. And the Google Doc just outlines everything that we're going to do together and what you can expect and all the information that they need. And then if they're interested, they can email me and we'll set a time to talk. I usually interview every single person who's going to come into the program before they come in, just to make sure that they're in the right headspace, that they've got the capital they need and all of that stuff. But I try and do things a little bit differently so that when people show up, they're like, oh, this isn't like anything I've seen before. Because I think in our industry, it's very mature. Whatever coaching space you're in, there's a pretty good chance the person coming to you has already bought courses. They've already been in groups. They've already done all that stuff with, let's just say, mixed results at best. So you have to do something different and you have to show that that what they're entering into is not going to be the same that they've had before. And so every part of what I do is designed to signal to them that what they're joining is going to be different.
most of these people that are reaching out to you, have they already had coaching before? And are they reaching out to you and saying, hey, I've had coaching, I've done this before. What are you doing differently? Or is it new coaches? Is that kind of like your jam? Is that your bread and butter and who you enjoy working with?
Um, I don't. I think I enjoy working with, if I had to pick one, and this is going to sound terrible, I think I enjoy working with the guys who are already successful, just because there's less ramp up time.
Yeah.
Right. So if I've got a client who's doing $200,000-$300,000 a year in his coaching business and he wants to re-engineer it, I don't have to do a lot of explaining. I'm like, all right, you're going to need to build out this page and you're going to have to do these things. And, let's write a little bit of copy and okay, here's how you structure your email sequences and the order that they need to go in. And he can go and do that. If you're working with somebody brand new, you got to explain what email sequences are. And you have to explain what the psychology is behind why you're layering in the way you're doing it. Right. And so there's just a whole lot of extra work that goes into helping those folks. And they also, let's just be honest, they don't have as much capital. They don't have as much sunken cost. So it's a lot more ramp up time to get them a result. It's pretty easy if you're already doing $200,000 a year in your business and you come to me in 60 days, I can probably add $10,000 or $20,000 to the bottom line, right? Just in the first 2 months. It's not that difficult if you already have structure in place. If you're brand new, man, it might be 18 months. You're going to have to be committed to. I require a 6-month commitment for all of my, sub $100,000 coaching clients because I don't want them coming in if they're not mentally prepared for that. And I tell them right up front, it'll probably be 2 years before you'll see any consistent and predictable revenue coming out of the business. So if you're not prepared for that, go do something else, go hire somebody else because I can't help you.
Mm. I just love how you've honed in on exactly who you can help and who you can't help. That's just such an inspiration. I think a lot of people, a lot of our audience and listeners, myself included, and I know Ewan's probably agreeing here as well. You have got it honed in, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's something worth noting, and that's why, over the years, as you've built, you've obviously put in the work, and here you are today. And so, have you found yourself by doing the different marketing, you saying yes to the podcast, the reels? We saw you on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. You're all over the place. Have you found by saying and honing in on your message on who you can help and who you cannot help? Because let's be honest, business owners and entrepreneurs, what do we try to do the first 0 to 5 years? We can help everybody, right? Life coaching, no problem. We can help you in your health and fitness. Entrepreneurship, yeah, we can help you. And that imposter syndrome pops up. But for you, it's like you have narrowed down, you know exactly what you're saying, when you're saying it, how you're saying it, and how you're showing up. And I think that message is coming across in your social media content. Obviously, it's come across today on the podcast. Would you contribute that to honing in on your avatar, your target audience, and who you're speaking to, and those people are reaching out to you, and those are the ones you want to work with?
Yeah, I think I would. You mentioned something interesting. So I've learned over the years that once you become Dan Kennedy used to say that everybody's walking around with their umbilical cord hanging out, looking for someplace to plug it in. Basically, we're all looking for someone to shift responsibility and decision making to, right? And we all do it. I also do that, right? Um, But what we don't realize as coaches is that once we become that person in one area of someone's life, they tend to want us to do it in every other aspect too.
Mm.
So they'll call and they'll ask life advice, they'll ask marriage advice. I get all kinds of crazy questions. And I've learned over the years to tell people I am not qualified to give you that advice, right? That is not my area of expertise. I can't do that. But see, people want that because that absolves them of the need to go out and find somebody who can be that to them.
Mm.
And so I would attribute a lot of the success I've had on social media to the fact that I've tightly honed that message, or at least I hope I have. Um, but I again, you can't, if you help everyone, you help nobody. You got to be very clear about who you help and what the conditions are under which you can provide that help, and very clear on the outcomes that you can get. And if you're trying to be all things to all people, you just get lost in the noise.
Mm.
Man, you're so honed, like John was saying, so honed in, so experienced at this point, and you've just got a well-oiled machine, and so that you're at that higher level just because you put in the reps, the time, and you've earned everything you're speaking right now. What is someone like you? What are you working on personally? How do you, what goes on in your mind? Like, what do you think about yourself as far as developing and like, this is what I'm working on to become better at? And because that's a never ending journey, that right till the day we die. But like, where are you at in that journey for yourself? Like, what do you kind of let your mind rest on to try and improve on?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I would consider myself obsessive compulsive. So I don't have an addictive personality, but I tend to get on to things and then I latch on like a dog, and I just won't let go until I feel like I understand enough about that area to be confident. And I think one of the things I struggle with now is doing any kind of paid marketing beyond outside of social media, right? So social media, it used to be that we could go out and I could buy $20,000 worth of email leads, and I could turn that into $40,000 or $50,000 in a week, right? You could just, because there was a simple process. They went into a webinar, the webinar came out, and we just had sales, right? On social media back in the day, I remember sitting in Traffic and Conversion Summit when there were only like 600 people in the room. It was like the first or second one that they ever did. And they were talking about who's on Facebook right now. And Facebook was still really new. And nobody, like 3 hands in the room went up. These are all professional online marketers. Nobody was using Facebook to do their marketing. They were getting like 68-cent leads off of Facebook at the time. It was
Wow.
ridiculously cheap. Now, if you don't have a massive budget and don't have 3 to 6 months to recoup the investment, you can't really do it because leads are going for, $5 to $25,
Yeah.
depending on where you're at. So I've had to restructure the business over the years to stop selling any sort of low ticket thing
Mm.
because you just can't make the math work. And so what I would really like to do now, and what I'm working on, is trying to figure out a way to do better paid advertising. So that I can, because that's an easy increase. If you can buy leads for free, if you can get a lead into your email list for $0, that's gold. Because I know that 50% of those leads will turn into sales at some point. Now, maybe a year down the road, but if I can acquire them for free, that's massive. And I just don't, I'm not good. If you came to me wanting to do paid ads, I'd have to send you somewhere else because I don't know how to do it. What I'm really good at and have been pretty good at is YouTube. I've been able to of all the social media, for some reason, maybe it's me, but I've found for most coaches, YouTube is the place to be. People are going there for entertainment and to be educated. They'll watch long form stuff. They're not doom scrolling on the toilet. They tend to be sitting at a desk or actively engaged in
Mm.
finding information that they need. And if you're stepping into the void of that and you can stand out, man, it's great at bringing people into the business.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah, YouTube is well, it's owned by Google, but they say it's the second largest search engine now. That's where people go to get all their information is YouTube, and they're either looking for entertainment or they're looking to learn something. And yeah, that's a great point, man. And so you've just been kind of honing that skill. Like, how do you get that attention and all that? Is that
Yeah,
the
I actually had a meeting. I have a friend of mine who lives here in Scottsdale, and he does social media professionally. And he does it for his own company and for other companies. And I was sitting down with him trying to understand better about what I could do to grow the YouTube side of my marketing.
Mm.
And he was incredibly helpful. And that's another thing that I don't think people do enough, especially as you start to find a little success. All of a sudden, you're afraid to go out and say, "Hey, I don't know anything about this."
Mm.
And I've never really had that problem. I'm like, I want to know everything you know, because once I know everything you know and I combine it with everything I know, I'm going to know the most. And so I like to dig in when somebody's qualified. And now the tricky part is finding a person who's actually qualified to give you advice. But once you find that person, man, I will extract. Let me buy you dinner. Let me pay some for your time and for some one-on-one back and forth, and whatever it takes for me to learn what I need to learn. So
That's exactly
I'm
why
always
people come to
invested.
you. You shorten the gap, the time frame. It's to get them to
Absolutely.
where they
Yeah.
want to
Can
go,
you
and
imagine if
it's
I had
worth
to
paying
try and
for.
go out and figure out what the way the algorithm was really working, and how to reformat my thumbnails and what was working now with my business versus somebody who's doing, who's getting 100,000 views on every single thing that they post. Like, there's so much more data there. That guy's got, that's all he does in his whole world. I have a huge world. That's just a small piece of what I do. He
Yeah.
does it all day. So yeah, go extract that from him. And he's good friends, so he's more than willing to do it.
You're not talking about Andy Elliott, are you? Because he lives in Arizona.
No, no, no. I'm not talking about him. He's another. I won't mention his name. But
Okay.
a great guy. Great
Yeah.
guy.
No worries, man. I'm curious with you, man. Doing all these different things. You've got the beautiful website. You got the newsletters. You've got the social media on across all the platforms. And I haven't heard you mention. Do you have a team, or is it just? So it's just you?
Just me.
Incredible.
I don't even have any contractors right now. Now I
How
always
are you
disclaim
pumping
that
all
because
this out?
yeah. What's funny is I only create about 3 hours a day, 3 or 4 hours a day, because I
Tell me
find that
more.
that's kind of the max that somebody can, I think, engage in creative activity and really be at their best. And so, well, let me just tell you about today. So today I'm finishing up the edit on a video. When we get done here at this call at 9 a.m., I've got office hours for my clients. That's 2 hours that I just leave open for anybody who wants to come in and get some help, and it's available for them to do that. Once I get done with that, I'll have some time to finish up the video edit and answer some emails. And then at 2 o'clock, I have another meeting because I'm an investor and kind of operating as the chief marketing officer for a tech startup in San Jose. So we've got an update meeting on some direct mail campaigns that we ran. And then that ends at 2 p.m. So then I have from about 3 to 5 or so to kind of backfill. If I've got to do any administrative stuff, I'll do probably write some more scripts or write an email to go out tomorrow. Just put some stuff together. And I'm just very efficient with my day. So I came from the Marine Corps, and people used to ask me when I was trading, they would say, well, did the military give you all this discipline to just trade consistently all the time? As it's a misconception that the military gives you discipline. I think discipline is largely a myth. I think we're easily disciplined in things that we want to do, but we ever struggle with things we don't. So, how do you create discipline in your life? And I said, what the military does, it gives you structure. Every morning at 5:30, you're going to be up and we're going to run. And then after we're done with that, you have an hour before you have to be down to work. So you can clean up, go eat a little breakfast, whatever it is. But in an hour or two, you got to be down at work. And then there's an organization for every part of the day. It's why you see guys who are in the special operations units who get out of the military and they immediately put on 50 pounds. It's like, dude, what happened? Loses the structure. He didn't have that structure when he left. And so if you want to be disciplined, it's not about sitting down and forcing yourself to do something. It's about it's organizing your life and structuring your life in a way that gets stuff done.
What would
And
you say
people,
is some enemies to structure? What is
what
the
are
thing that can derail?
Yeah, improper planning. So I think that, and also the need to eat, right? So I find myself to be a lot less disciplined and a lot less structured when the bank account is fully padded and I've got a long line of revenue carved out. I'm no different than anybody else, right? If I've got tons of money and I'm not worried about it and I'm not worried about what's going to happen in the business in 6 months, maybe I'll take a Tuesday off. But most of the time, I try and structure things in a way that I do things at specific times. So from 8 to 9 every morning is email writing. right? And then, I have my office hours at the same time. I have other coaching calls that are only scheduled on Thursdays and Fridays. I don't do any other coaching calls, right? I try and block all of the business development stuff and things that I'm doing on Tuesdays and Wednesdays so that if I don't have coaching calls on Thursday or Friday, those are completely open days with nothing but white space where I can create. And that's what I like doing, right? I like being creative. I like going out and creating marketing campaigns. I like, coming up with presentations and trainings that I'm going to give my clients. That's what I love doing. And I want to sit in a room all day and do that. So I structured my life in a way that provides me that while still giving me the time that if my buddy calls me on Thursday afternoon and says, "Hey, let's go have a happy hour," I can take off because there's nothing there that's keeping me. Does that make sense?
Man, that right there, that last 30 seconds, that's the ultimate marketing piece right there, man. That just sounded blissful. It's wonderful. And that's what you coach.
Yep.
I like peace. I don't like, you could call me somewhat anxiety stricken. Like I don't want conflict. I'm not interested in that. I don't want stress or pressure that things have to be done and that I'm behind on things. So I try and give myself enough latitude in the schedule that I don't have to worry about that stuff. Now, I do have a bookkeeper. So I don't keep my own books. So that's the one thing I do, an accountant. So I do pay for those things, but everything else I do myself.
Man, beautiful. I could go on and on. I've got like multiple more questions now that you've talked about that. Anyway, yeah, for the sake of time, we'll wrap things up. But Jason, you've been awesome, man. A breath of fresh air. You have provided so much unique perspective and in a different lens, in just a calm, reserved, humble, poised manner. A lot of times, me and you talk about this, and we laugh about it behind the scenes. I'm the guy that's like, bop, like I'm turn the volume up, like in your ear, And Ewan's kind of he extracts the ideas and the perspectives and has his vibe. And here you are, just this, efficient, humble, poised, just really polished, man. So we really appreciate you saying yes and being on the podcast. We feel honored. We appreciate you. I know our listeners are going to appreciate you. So 2 final questions, my friend, is one. How can our listeners and audience, with all that being said, all the value that you've provided today, how can we support you? How can we follow you?
Well, jasonstapleton.com is the website. Most of the stuff is there. If I answer all of my own emails, I don't have an assistant. So if you have a question and you just want to reach out to me, it's jason@jasonstapleton.com, about as easy as it could be. And so if you're looking for help with your business, your coaching business, and you want to talk, just let me know. I'm happy to sit down and chat with you and discuss your situation. But that's the easiest way to do it. I got a YouTube channel, but all that stuff's on the website. So you can just go there to find it all.
Awesome, man. We'll also have that in the show notes too for easy access. Second and final question, my friend. What does level up and live mean to you?
Man, I first of all, thank you for having me on the show. You guys are great. I watched a couple of your things. I know you guys had reached out a couple of different times to me and it got backlogged with other stuff I was doing. And I appreciate you guys with the follow-up. And there's a lesson in there for everybody who is running a podcast or trying to get somebody's attention and they send one email and then they're just like, well, he didn't respond, and it's like, no, I'm going to hit him again and see if we can get him to do something. You're not trying to sell me anything. You're just trying to give me some free publicity, which I'm deeply appreciative for. So just remember that if you're in the marketing space, as you're trying to find those peoples and those connections, keep asking until you get a no and then leave them alone. But level up and live for me is, in my mind, and I don't know if this is right or not. So you guys have to tell me what it means.
There's no right or wrong, man.
Oh, there's no right or wrong. All right. Well, then this is what it means to me. It means that you are taking an active look at your life and what it means to be to live a meaningful and fulfilled life. I think at the end of this world, no one's going to care how much money you made. You're not going to care about the stuff that you had. What you're going to care about is the life that you lived. And leveling up your life doesn't mean increasing the amount of stuff that you've got. It means increasing the amount of experiences you have, the deep human connections that you have the opportunity to have, the friendships that you build, right? The spiritual journey that you go on, right? Those are all, that's leveling up your life. And then live it. Realize that you've only got one shot at this. We get one go around, right? And after this is over, that's it. Yeah. So burn the candle at both ends, like suck the bone marrow out of life, every piece of it, and don't sacrifice all of these amazing things that you want to do today for some future date. There is no happily ever after, guys. There's no point where you make it, right? There is always a new hurdle. There's always a new mountain to climb. And at some point, you've got to decide, hey, there are things in this chapter of my life, at this phase of my life, I will never get to do again. If you want to go backpack through Europe, you're going to have a tough time doing that at 65, right? Maybe you get lucky. Probably not. And so do the things in this chapter of your life that will be gone, because you can always make more money. Money is a renewable resource, right? Time is not. So don't squander your time. Level up and live.
Man, that was beautiful, man.
Beautiful.
That's a t-shirt I've ever heard one. Suck the bone marrow out of life. That was awesome, man. That was cool.
We asked that question to every single guest. I'm not going to lie. We've done it dozens of times, and that hit my heart and soul, man. Yeah, everything that you said, you nailed it. And also, too, I noticed the energy shift, too. Like, you were really speaking to the Level Up and Live. So we always end the call by Level Up and Live. We appreciate all of our audience, our listeners listening to this. Make sure you go follow and support our friend, Jason Stapleton. And thanks again. And Level Up and Live.
Level Up and Live.